The crowd gathered in the grand hall, buzzing with excitement and anticipation. It was an event unlike any other, a display of what humans called a show of strength. The alien races from across the galaxy filled the seats, eager to see the latest curiosity, a human, displayed as a prize for entertainment. The human was dressed in a simple suit, his face calm yet determined, standing in the center of a grand stage. His eyes scanned the crowd, unsure of what to expect. Around him, the spaceport was alive with strange creatures. Some were tall, others short, with scales, fur, or shimmering skin. Their eyes, bright and intense, watched every move of the human, calculating, waiting. No one could remember a time when humans had been seen in such a public spectacle. To them, it was all a strange game. The human, weak by their standards, was little more than an oddity to be observed and mocked. Among the crowd, there were murmurs of laughter. A few alien beings snickered as they watched the human stand in the middle of the arena, his posture stiff and unsure. Some found it funny, the idea that such a fragile species could ever hold their own in a galaxy of powerful beings. The Vulpine race, with their sharp eyes and sleek fur, were the loudest in their mocking. They didn't understand why anyone would care about a creature as defenseless as a human. Their laughter echoed across the room. Yet, the human didn't flinch, he didn't even react. It was as if the whole scene didn't matter to him. And that intrigued a few. The Vulpine people were used to seeing others cower before them. To see one so calm was unusual, but it only made them laugh harder. But just as the crowd's jeering grew louder, the doors to the hall opened. The noise died down almost instantly. The tension in the air was thick as everyone turned their attention to the entrance. She appeared in a blur of motion. The Vulpine Queen. Her fur was a fiery orange, streaked with hues of red and gold. Her eyes were a deep, glowing blue, a mark of her royal status. She walked with an air of undeniable authority. Every movement was calculated, graceful, yet strong. She was tall, taller than most of her kind, with sleek muscles beneath her regal armor. The crowd parted, and even the loudest voices fell silent as she made her way to the center of the stage. The human, who had stood silently until now, looked up at her with calm but intense eyes. There was no fear in him. His expression, as always, was steady, almost as if he expected this moment. The Vulpine Queen paused in front of him, studying him for a long moment. Her sharp eyes narrowed as she inspected him, something about the human making her curious. In the silence that followed, the crowd waited. The Vulpine Queen was known for her sharp judgment, and for one to earn her attention, there had to be something special about them. But what? For a brief second, the Queen's lips curled into a small smile. She bent down slightly so her face was close to the human's. "Tell me, human," she said softly, her voice carrying across the room. "What do you think of our strength? What do you think of your place in this galaxy?" The human stood still, his gaze unwavering. The entire hall held its breath. The Vulpine Queen had posed the question, one that was meant to humiliate. It was clear she was testing him, trying to provoke a reaction. But the human remained silent, almost as if he were processing her words carefully. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "I am human. We are not here to show strength or fight your battles. We are here to survive, to learn, and to grow. My place is where I stand." There was a brief pause, then an unexpected thing happened. The Queen's smile faded into something unreadable. She stood up straight, taking a step back. The room was still, too still. The human's words had done something that no one had anticipated. A low murmur spread across the hall. Some began to whisper, unsure of what to make of it. The human was not afraid. The human was not begging for mercy. He had spoken as if he belonged there, as if this was his arena. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, and that, in Inquanglan, was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Itself was enough to make the Vulpine Queen's interest grow. There was something about this human. Something different. Something that might change the course of this event, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy itself. The crowd waited, unsure of what would come next. The Queen's next move could be anything. It could mean the end of this human's life, or it could mean something far more unexpected. The Vulpine Queen was not one to be easily impressed, yet there was something about this human that made her pause. And that pause, that silence, was the beginning of something much larger than any of them could have imagined. Asterisk. The air was thick with anticipation as the crowd continued to murmur, unsure of what to expect. The human, standing in the center of the arena, still had no fear in his eyes. He seemed oblivious to the tension that crackled in the air, his posture unwavering as he met the Vulpine Queen's gaze. The Vulpine Queen, who had only moments ago shown the slightest hint of curiosity, now wore a more serious expression. She studied the human carefully, taking in every detail. His calmness was unsettling. It was not arrogance, nor was it indifference. It was something more, something she couldn't quite place. The Queen's keen eyes shifted to her subjects, who waited in silence, unsure how to interpret the human's words. This was not how such displays were supposed to go. They had all expected the human to beg, to show weakness, or at the very least some hint of fear. Yet here he stood, undaunted, as if he were ready to challenge the entire galaxy. The Queen's interest deepened. She was no stranger to power. She had fought battles, led armies, and ruled an empire, but she had never encountered an opponent quite like this. A human, so small and fragile by their standards, standing with such resolve. "You speak of survival, human," the Queen said, her voice low and filled with intrigue. "But survival in this galaxy is not won by words alone. It is won by strength, by power, by the ability to crush your enemies before they have a chance to strike." The human remained silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. The Queen's words echoed through the hall, and the crowd fell into a hushed stillness. They all knew the Queen's reputation. No one had ever dared to challenge her, but this human. He was different. Finally the human spoke, his voice steady, though there was a slight shift in his tone. "I don't need to crush anyone. I don't need power to prove my worth. My people have survived through cooperation, through intelligence, and through our will to protect one another. Strength is not just physical, it's the strength to endure, to adapt." The Queen was silent for a moment. She had expected defiance, perhaps even a challenge, but this was something else. It was as though he was speaking from a place far beyond simple survival. He wasn't merely defending himself. He was challenging the very foundation of everything the Queen and Queen, her people, believed in. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension between the two. The Vulpine Queen was not used to being questioned, let alone by a human. But her curiosity was piqued, and that was dangerous. "You speak of endurance," the Queen said, her voice now laced with both challenge and amusement. "Then prove it. You will face a trial, human, not one of strength, but of wit. Survive it, and perhaps we will see if there is more to your kind than mere endurance." The human raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "A trial? What kind of trial?" The Queen's lips curled into a smile, one that was both dangerous and enticing. "A trial of survival. You will face the arena, but not as you expected. You will face the beasts of the galactic wasteland. If you can survive for even an hour, I will consider your words. You will earn your place among us. Fail, and your people will see just how fragile your kind truly is." The crowd stirred at the mention of the beasts. The galactic wasteland was known for its savage, untamable creatures, beasts so fierce and deadly that even the most powerful of warriors had failed to survive. To face them was considered a death sentence for anyone, let alone a human. The Queen's challenge was not just a test of survival. It was a test of everything the human had claimed about his kind. The human met her gaze, his expression as calm. "As ever, I accept your challenge," he said simply. The Vulpine Queen nodded, a gleam of approval in her eyes. She had expected hesitation, but instead, the human had accepted without fear. That in itself was rare. She stepped back, motioning for the arena to be prepared. As the human was led away to be outfitted for the trial, the crowd buzzed with excitement. They had come to witness the human's failure, but now they found themselves caught between disbelief and curiosity. Would the human survive? Or would he fall like all those before him? In the heart of the arena, the human stood ready, his mind racing but his face still as calm as ever. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this was different. This was a test of not just his physical strength, but his very spirit. And yet, deep down, he knew one thing. He would not give up. Not for his survival. Not for the pride of his species. He would prove that there was more to humanity than anyone, alien or otherwise, could ever understand. The door to the arena slowly creaked open, and the first beast emerged from the shadows. Its eyes glowed with malice, its sharp teeth gleaming in the dim light. The trial had begun. The gates of the arena groaned as they creaked open, a heavy silence filling the space. The human stood still, facing the dark, shadowy expanse of the wasteland beyond. The air smelled of burnt metal and the faint, pungent odor of creatures long forgotten by time. The Vulpine Queen stood in the shadows, watching intently. Her glowing eyes tracked every movement, every breath the human took. To her, this was no longer just about proving strength. This was something far more fascinating. She had given him the challenge, now she would watch as he faced it head-on. Behind him, the door clanged open, and a monstrous roar echoed across the arena. The first beast stepped into the light, a towering creature with rippling scales, and eyes like burning embers. Its claws were longer than the human's body, and its massive jaws could crush anything in its path. The beast let out a deafening growl, its breath thick with the stench of death. The human's heart rate quickened, but his face remained calm. He had been trained for survival. He had been through worse. This was just another obstacle, another test. The crowd gasped in awe, unable to look away. The human stood so small in comparison to the creature, yet he did not falter. His hands tightened, his muscles bracing for the inevitable. The Vulpine Queen tilted her head slightly. This human ... he wasn't like any she had ever encountered. Most would have run or begged, but he was not running. He was standing still, as though waiting for something. The beast roared once more, charging at him with incredible speed, its claws slashing through the air. In an instant, it closed the distance between them. The human didn't move, his posture still composed. The crowd gasped as they thought for sure the human would be torn apart. But just before the beast could strike, the human ducked low, rolling to the side in a swift and practiced motion. The crowd let out a collective shout of surprise. The human had avoided the beast's initial attack with ease. The creature swung its claws around, snarling in frustration. The human was quick, but the beast was powerful and relentless. It turned on a dime and lunged again, this time aiming for the human's chest. But the human was ready. He leapt forward, his arms reaching out to grab the beast's massive foreleg. With a twist and a grunt, he used the creature's own momentum to flip it onto its back. The crowd roared in astonishment. No one expected this. The human, against all odds, had taken the offensive. For a moment, the beast lay stunned, struggling to regain its balance. The human, now on top of it, held one of its massive claws to the ground. His breath came in short bursts, but his focus was sharp. He had no time for hesitation. This was a fight for his life. The Vulpine Queen's expression hardened. She had not anticipated this. She knew the strength of the beasts. She had seen many skilled warriors fall before them. Yet this human, with his resourcefulness and unexpected agility, was something else entirely. It wasn't just about physical strength, it was about his ability to think, to adapt. The beast, now enraged, regained its footing and roared once more. It tried to shake off the human, thrashing wildly. The human gritted his teeth as the beast's powerful movements nearly knocked him off. But he held firm, using his opponent's weight against it, moving with precision. With a swift, calculated move, the human grabbed one of the creature's massive teeth and used it as leverage to twist its head to the side. The beast screamed in pain, and with one final twist, the human forced it to the ground. He stood tall over the creature, his chest heaving, sweat glistening on his forehead. The beast lay motionless beneath him, defeated. The arena erupted in an explosive cheer, a wave of disbelief sweeping through the crowd. No one had expected this. The human had done what even the greatest warriors had failed to do. He had defeated one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The Vulpine Queen stood in stunned silence, her eyes locked onto the human. But this was only the beginning. The human had passed the first trial. But the Queen was no fool. There was much more to come. She had seen enough to know that this human was capable of more than she had anticipated. But would he be able to survive the next challenge? The next trial would test not just his survival skills, but his very will to continue. The Queen's gaze softened for just a moment. She hadn't expected to feel anything other than indifference toward the human. But now she couldn't deny the sense of respect growing within her. The human had proven his worth, but the games were far from over. As the gates to the arena closed, the human stood alone in the center, the remains of the beast at his feet. He was exhausted, bruised, and bloodied, but he had survived, and that was enough for now. His mind was already on the next challenge. He knew that surviving was never just about the fight, it was about something much more important. He had to show them that humanity had a place in this galaxy. He was determined not just to survive, but to win. The arena gates slowly closed behind the human, a heavy silence hanging in the air. The crowd, still buzzing from the unexpected defeat of the first beast, was now on edge. The Vulpine Queen's eyes were fixed on the human, her expression unreadable. She had seen many warriors enter her trials, but none had ever faced the first beast and lived. None had ever proven their strength, intelligence, and courage the way he had. The human, though exhausted, stood tall. He didn't look around for praise or recognition. He simply took in a deep breath, wiping the sweat from his brow. His mind, still sharp, was already focused on what lay ahead. He had survived the first trial, but there was no time to rest. He knew that the Queen would never be satisfied with just a single victory. She had more in store for him. The ground beneath his feet trembled slightly, signaling the arrival of the next challenge. A low hum filled the air, followed by the sound of clanking chains and shifting metal. The Vulpine Queen's voice echoed across the arena, cutting through the tension. "You have passed the first trial, human," she said, her voice carrying authority. "But your survival is not yet guaranteed. You will face your next challenge now. If you can survive this, you may just earn your place in the galaxy." From the shadows, a massive figure emerged. This creature was unlike the first. It was more humanoid in shape, standing on two legs like a man, but its body was covered in thick, armored plating, and its face was obscured by a jagged helmet. It carried a large, deadly weapon, which hummed with energy. The crowd gasped as the new challenger stepped into the arena, its every movement sending vibrations through the ground. The human eyed the new opponent carefully. Unlike the beast he had just defeated, this creature was not wild, it was methodical. It was a warrior, not an animal. This would be a fight of strategy, of wits, not just strength. The creature stood still, its weapon aimed at the human, who wasted no time. He needed to stay in motion, stay unpredictable. The Vulpine Queen's eyes glinted with interest, her sharp mind calculating. This was a trial of more than just physicality. It was a battle of survival in a different form. The human had faced an animal before, but now he was up against a thinking, intelligent adversary. The creature lunged forward, its energy weapon crackling with power. The human dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. The energy pulse seared the ground where he had stood just moments before, leaving a trail of scorched earth. The crowd gasped again. This was no ordinary weapon. The human, however, was already on his feet, analyzing the creature's movements. The creature swung its weapon with precision, trying to catch the human off guard. The human ducked, weaving through the blows, moving with agility and grace. It was clear that the human had a strategy. He wasn't just trying to fight back. He was trying to understand his opponent, figure out its weaknesses. The Vulpine Queen narrowed her eyes. The human was not just surviving, he was adapting. He was not relying on brute strength, but on cunning and quick thinking. She had expected him to be overwhelmed by the creature, but instead, he was handling it with remarkable skill. The human's eyes darted to the weapon in the creature's hand. He knew that if he didn't disable it, he wouldn't last much longer. The creature's blasts were deadly, and the longer it fought, the more precise its attacks would become. With a swift movement, the human leapt forward, using the creature's momentum against it. He grabbed the leg of the creature and twisted, sending it crashing to the ground. The weapon slipped from the creature's grasp as it fell, and the human quickly moved to disarm it. The creature recovered quickly, pushing itself back onto its feet. It growled in frustration, its helmet crackling with energy as it reactivated its weapon. The human didn't hesitate. He knew this was his moment. He rushed forward, his body moving like a well-oiled machine, and with one final push, he knocked the weapon from the creature's hands. The crowd, which had once been skeptical, now watched in stunned silence. The human had done it again. He had outsmarted his opponent. He hadn't relied on brute strength. He had used his mind, his strategy, to win. The Vulpine Queen's expression remained unreadable, but her respect for the human was growing. The creature, now disarmed and defeated, staggered back. The human stood over it, chest heaving with exhaustion, but his eyes sharp and focused. He had won. He had survived another trial. The Vulpine Queen stood in her observation chamber, watching the scene unfold. She had thought that the human would be an easy target, but she was starting to realize that he was far more than she had ever imagined. His resilience, his intelligence, was unlike anything she had ever seen before. This human was not like the others she had tested. He was something different. The crowd erupted into applause, though it was clear that many were still processing what they had witnessed. This wasn't just a fight, it was a display of survival, of cunning, of will. The human had proven that. He was not to be underestimated, but the queen wasn't finished. She knew that there was more to this human, more to his kind, than met the eye. There was something she had yet to see, a part of the human spirit that could not be easily broken. She would test that next dot as the human was led out of the arena, his body bruised and battered, but his spirit unbroken. He knew this was far from over. The trials were not just about survival. They were about proving that humanity had a place in this galaxy, one that no one could take away, and he was willing to fight for that place, no matter the cost. The arena was eerily quiet. After the excitement of the second trial, the crowd's chatter had died down to a tense whisper. The human, now bloodied and bruised but still standing tall, was led to the center of the arena. His movements were slow, worn from the battles he had already fought, yet his eyes burned with the same determination they had held when he first entered the arena. The Vulpine Queen stood high above in her observation tower, her sharp gaze fixed on the human below. She could feel the anticipation of the crowd, the growing sense of awe and uncertainty. This human had surpassed every expectation. He had fought with intelligence, agility, and unexpected resilience. But now, it was time for the final trial, the one that would truly test everything he was made of. The human wiped his brow, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He was exhausted. His body ached with every movement, but he refused to show weakness. He had come this far, and he would not falter now. The first beast had nearly killed him, but he had used his mind to defeat it. The second trial, against the armored warrior, had been a test of wit and survival. He had overcome that as well, using his environment and his instincts to win. But this was different. The ground began to tremble again, this time more violently. The gates on the opposite side of the arena opened with a deep groan, revealing a massive figure emerging from the shadows. This was unlike anything the human had faced before. The creature that entered was not just large, it was a towering, monstrous being. Its skin was covered in thick, spiked armor, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. The ground shook with each step it took, and its massive claws dragged against the floor, sending sparks flying in every direction. The crowd gasped in awe and fear. Even the Vulpine Queen couldn't hide her surprise. This creature was an apex predator, the kind that had been bred for war. It was a force of nature, nearly indestructible, and it had one purpose: to destroy anything in its path. The humans. Eyes narrowed as he assessed his opponent. He knew this would be his hardest trial. There would be no tricks, no strategy to outsmart this beast. This would be a fight to the death, one that would test his every limit. The human's hand instinctively went to the knife he had strapped to his side. It was small, but it was something. A small comfort, perhaps, but it would have to do. The Vulpine Queen's voice echoed across the arena, calm yet filled with authority. Survive, human, and you will have earned your place among the stars. Fail, and you will be nothing more than another forgotten casualty of the galaxy. The human stood still, his chest rising and falling with each breath. He wasn't afraid, at least, not in the way one might expect. His mind was already working, already planning. He knew that to survive this final test, he would need to be faster, more adaptable than ever before. The creature roared, the sound vibrating through the very bones of the arena. It charged at him, its massive form moving with terrifying speed. For something so large, the human barely had time to react. He dove to the side, rolling across the ground, narrowly avoiding the creature's first swipe. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and blood as the human sprang back to his feet, his eyes locked on the creature's every movement. The beast turned, its glowing eyes fixed on the human with predatory hunger. It swung its enormous claws. Again, each strike hitting with the force of a falling meteor. The human ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding each attack, but he knew he couldn't keep this up forever. The creature was too powerful, too fast. It was relentless. In a desperate bid to survive, the human turned and sprinted toward the wall of the arena. The creature followed, closing the gap quickly. The human reached the wall, and with a sudden burst of strength, pushed off, launching himself into the air. For a split second, time seemed to slow as he flew above the creature's head, narrowly avoiding its claws. He landed behind it, breathing heavily, but with a small, almost imperceptible smirk on his face. The crowd, who had watched with bated breath, erupted into cheers. They had seen something they never expected, a human, small and fragile by their standards, outmaneuvering a creature of unimaginable strength. But the fight was far from over. The creature whirled around, its anger palpable. It roared again, charging once more at the human, who was now cornered against the wall. The human's mind raced. He had no weapon capable of defeating this beast. He had no escape, but he did have one thing: the environment. The arena was filled with obstacles, pillars, broken metal, and a variety of debris. The human spotted a large piece of wreckage. Nearby sharp, jagged metal, which could be used as a weapon, if he could get to it before the creature charged again. With the creature closing in, the human bolted toward the wreckage, grabbing the sharp metal shard with both hands. The creature, furious, charged after him. But this time, the human didn't dodge. He stood firm, waiting for the right moment. Creature lunged, its claws aimed straight for the human's chest. In that split second, the human swung the metal shard, catching the creature's arm as it reached out. The sharp edge of the metal bit into the creature's thick armor, causing it to howl in pain. The human used the momentum to drive the shard deeper, aiming for the creature's weak spots, its joints, the underbelly of its armored chest. The creature roared, thrashing wildly as it tried to shake the human off, but it was too late. With a final well-placed strike, the human pierced the creature's heart. The beast let out one last deafening roar before collapsing to the ground. Its body crumpling in a heap of lifeless metal and flesh. The arena fell silent. The Vulpine Queen stared, her eyes wide with disbelief. The crowd, too, was silent, processing what they had just witnessed. The human, bloodied and battered but alive, stood victorious. He had done it. Against all odds, he had defeated the creature, the apex predator of the galaxy. The human dropped to his knees, exhausted beyond measure. His body screamed in pain, but his spirit was unbroken. He had faced every trial, every monster, and every obstacle that had been thrown at him. And he had survived. The Vulpine Queen's voice rang out again, this time filled with a strange mix of respect and awe. You have proven yourself human. You are not just a survivor. You are a warrior. Welcome to the galaxy. And with that, the final trial had ended. The human had earned his place, not just as a survivor, but as something more. A symbol of strength, of resilience, and of the unbreakable spirit of humanity. The journey had only just begun. The arena was quiet. The roar of the crowd had died down, replaced by an eerie, almost reverent silence. The human, still kneeling in the dust of the arena, slowly pushed himself to his feet. His body was battered, bruised, and bloodied from the trials he had faced. But his spirit remained unbroken. He had survived the trials, the beasts, the warriors, the impossible challenges, but now he had earned something far more precious. He had earned his place in the galaxy. As he stood, the Vulpine Queen descended from her observation tower, her golden armor glinting in the light. Her regal presence commanded the arena, and even the alien spectators who had witnessed countless displays of strength and battle stood in stunned silence. She walked toward the human, her sharp eyes never leaving him. She had seen many warriors fall before her trials, but this human, this fragile, underestimated species had done what no one had thought possible. You have impressed me, human. The Queen said, her voice a mix of awe and authority. Your strength is not just in your muscles, but in your spirit. You did not rely on brute force alone. You used your mind, your courage, your adaptability. You have proven that humanity is capable of far more than we ever expected. The human, still breathing heavily, wiped the blood from his face. His body ached, but he stood straighter now. He wasn't just fighting for his survival anymore. He was fighting for something greater, the future of his people, the very essence of what it meant to be human. I didn't just survive, the human replied, his voice steady. I showed that we are not to be underestimated. We may be small, but we are not weak. We may not have the power of your kind, but we have something more, the will to survive, intelligence to adapt, and the courage to face what others cannot. The Vulpine Queen studied him for a long moment, her blue eyes piercing into his. She had expected him to crumble, to beg for mercy, but instead, he had risen above the challenges in a way no one else could. And that intrigued her. No one in her empire had ever faced such adversity and come out victorious. Not like this. You are right, the Queen said, her tone softening. There is something different about you. About your kind. The galaxy has underestimated you, and I see now that I have made the same mistake. You are not just survivors, you are something far more dangerous. She paused, her gaze shifting to the crowd. You have proven yourself worthy of respect. And in this galaxy, that is not a small thing. The crowd erupted into applause. It was a sound the human had never expected to hear. Alien races who had once laughed at the idea of humanity being anything more than an insignificant species were now acknowledging him. They were acknowledging humanity. The human took a deep breath and turned to face the Vulpine Queen. Thank you, Your Majesty, but this is just the beginning. Humanity has always fought for a place in this galaxy, and now we have earned it. My people are more than capable of standing alongside the greatest of your kind. We are ready to be a part of this galaxy, not just as bystanders, but as equals. The Queen's lips curled into a smile, a rare expression for someone as proud and reserved as her. She extended her hand, an unexpected gesture of alliance and respect. I once thought, your species incapable of this, she said. But you have proven me wrong. You have earned your place. Welcome to the galaxy, human. As the human took her hand, a wave of realization washed over him. This wasn't just about him anymore. He had come to this arena to prove himself, to survive. But now he was representing all of humanity. The trials had been difficult, brutal, and deadly, but they had also been necessary. They were the crucible that had forged humanity's place among the stars. The crowd continued to cheer, their voices rising in unison. The Vulpine Queen's approval was something that carried weight in this galaxy. She was a ruler, a symbol of power and strength. And for her to acknowledge the human, and by extension, humanity itself, was a momentous occasion. But the human knew that this was only the beginning. There were still battles to be fought, alliances to be forged, and challenges to face. Humanity had been thrust into the heart of the galaxy, and now they had to prove themselves on a much larger stage. As the cheers of the crowd echoed through the arena, the human turned toward the horizon, where the distant stars glimmered in the vast expanse of space. This galaxy was full of dangers, wonders, and unknowns, but it was theirs to explore, to survive in, and to thrive within. And they would do it together. Part 7. The Dawn of Humanity. In the days that followed, the human became something of a legend. Stories of his trials spread across the galaxy like wildfire, reaching the ears of both allies and enemies. The Vulpine Queen, though a figure of immense power, had been forced to recognize that the human species could no longer be ignored. They had proven themselves in a way that no one could deny. The Queen called for a council of the galaxy's greatest leaders, representatives from every race, every species. It was time for a new era to begin, one where humanity would no longer be seen as weak or insignificant. The trials had tested the human's body, mind, and spirit, and now, the galaxy was ready to listen. As the human entered the council chambers, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. He had faced unimaginable odds to get here. But now, the real challenge would begin. Would humanity take its place among the stars as equals? Or would it fall to the same fate as countless other civilizations that had risen and fallen before them? The human stood before the galaxy's leaders, his eyes unwavering, his resolve stronger than ever. He had survived the trials, proven that humanity could stand with the greatest, and now it was time to lead. We are not just survivors, the human said, his voice strong. We are part of this galaxy. We will fight for peace, for justice, and for the future of all races. Humanity may have been a small, fragile species in the past, but now we are here to stay. And together we will shape the future. And so the new dawn began. A dawn where humanity stood side by side with the most powerful races in the galaxy, not as an underdog, but as a force to be reckoned with. The human's journey was far from over, but one thing was clear. Humanity had found its place in the stars. And it was only just beginning. *. The council chamber was grand, a vast circular room with a high vaulted ceiling, glowing with a soft ethereal light. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the seats, their eyes trained on the human who stood in the center of the room. For most of them, it was the first time seeing a human in such a position, an equal, not a mere curiosity to be dismissed or laughed at. There was a weight in the air, a gravity to the moment that no one dared to disrupt. The human, standing tall and unbowed, felt every eye upon him. His trials were behind him, the battles he had faced etched in the scars across his body. Yet, despite the physical toll, there was a new fire in his eyes, a fire that burned for his people, for his species, and for a future that he could now almost touch. The Vulpine Queen, standing beside him, observed the gathering with a quiet intensity. Her reputation as a ruler, as a figure of immense power, was unmatched. Yet today, she stood by the human, her gaze not one of dominance but of respect. She had seen his strength, his courage, and his brilliance. He had earned his place, and with that, she had made an important decision. A silence fell as the leader of the council, a towering figure from the ancient Xeran species, called the meeting to order. His voice, deep and resonant, filled the room as he spoke. Today, we are gathered here not only as leaders of our respective species, but as witnesses to a historic moment. Humanity has been tested like no other species before. The trials of strength, of mind, and of spirit have shown us that humanity is no longer the weak and insignificant species many once believed it to be. Today, we stand on the precipice of a new era. An era where humanity will take its place in the galaxy, not as outsiders, not as subordinates, but as equals. The room was still, but a subtle shift of energy passed through the assembled council. The human could feel it, an undercurrent of acknowledgement, a shared understanding that the universe was not quite as it once had been. The Vulpine Queen, her posture regal and proud, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence with authority. The trials were meant to test him, she said, her gaze falling on the human. But they were also meant to test all of you, to show you that humanity is capable of more than you ever thought possible. They have endured, they have adapted, and they have risen to challenges that would have broken others. I stand by this human, and by the people he represents. The chamber was still, but the tension was shifting. Alien faces that had once been indifferent or mocking were now thoughtful, and some even nodded in quiet respect. For the first time, humanity was being acknowledged not as a curiosity, but as a force that deserved to be heard. The Xeran leader spoke again, his voice more contemplative this time. The trials were not only about proving physical strength or tactical genius, they were a demonstration of something greater. The human species has shown a unique capacity for resilience, for unity, and for the relentless pursuit of survival. These are qualities we need in the galaxy. As we move forward, it is clear that humanity is no longer a species to be dismissed. They are partners, and they have earned that position today. A murmur of agreement rippled through the council. The human felt the weight of those words settle on him. This was no longer just about fighting for his survival. It was about something much larger: his people, their future, and the legacy they would now leave in the stars. The Vulpine Queen stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I propose an alliance," she said, her voice carrying with certainty. "Not just between our species, but a broader alliance. One where humanity's contributions will be recognized, where their strengths will be acknowledged. We will stand together as equals in the galaxy, not as rulers and subjects, but as partners. I will be the first to pledge my support for this new era." There was a long pause. The council was silent as the implications of the Queen's words sank in. Then, one by one, the leaders of the various species began to speak. Some spoke with measured caution, others with bold enthusiasm, but all understood the significance of what was happening. An agreement was forming, an understanding. that humanity had a place in the galaxy, a place of respect, of power, and of influence. The human felt a deep sense of pride, but also of responsibility. The weight of this moment was immense. He had proven himself. He had fought, he had bled, and now humanity would stand among the stars as equals. The trials had been a test of more than just his body, it had been a test of his people's spirit, their will, and their ability to forge a future in the vast unknown. As the council discussions continued, the human remained quiet, letting the words of the others settle into his thoughts. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, political struggles, and battles to face. But humanity had proven that it was capable of standing up to the greatest challenges. The trials had forged not only his place, but the future of his species. And as the council reached its agreement, the human looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the alien leaders, his gaze steady. He had achieved the impossible, but now the true work began. He would ensure that humanity's legacy was one of unity, cooperation, and strength. This galaxy, full of wonder and danger, would be theirs to explore, not as outsiders, but as partners, as equals. The Vulpine Queen turned to him, her expression serious but respectful. "This is your moment," she said softly. "The galaxy is watching, but do not forget, your greatest challenge is yet to come." The human nodded, his resolve as strong as ever. "I won't forget. This is just the beginning." The future of humanity had just begun, and it would be written among the stars.